Hi, I'm State Representative Seth Grove. Welcome to another edition of Legislative Report. Today we're in for a real treat. We're at the York Airport, which is housed in the 196th District. And with us is Tim Tate, operator, owner, entrepreneur of this wonderful establishment. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Seth. Yeah, it's a pleasure, and we're so happy to have you here to talk about the airport and the impact that the York Airport makes on our local community.
Yeah. And it's kind of a surprise that most people don't realize we have an airport. They kind of, I don't know if they think York County, country, you know, we're the 8th largest population county in the entire state. We have tons of international businesses, and this is really a key in economic development and actually bringing business into York County.
It certainly is, and you know, we have a great history here at the York Airport, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But some basic facts, and one fact is that the York Airport is a privately owned public use airport. There aren't a whole lot of those in the state. Most airports are owned by municipalities or authorities like Harrisburg or Lancaster and so forth. And in doing so, we don't really get any taxpayer support like our competitors do, the other airports that surround us. When we have a capital project here, if we have to resurface our runway, the state has a program that is funded through fuel tax on general aviation fuel and on airliner fuel. And we have access to that money, but no general fund money, as you know, helps to support the airport here. But yet the airport is a great asset to the community, providing, you know, a link for our local businesses, of which so many of them there are here, to the United States and beyond. Yeah,
it's amazing to hear how effective this airport is, whether it's bringing people in to promote sales, able to get our local business people out of York to different areas very quickly to bring business here. And so I don't know if we could even put a price tag on the economic driver of the airport, but I would say it provides a huge success and a huge added tool for the business community.
The last study that was done by the state, the Pennsylvania Airport System Plan, which was, this is about 10-year-old information, but at that point the economic impact of the airport, not to the local communities, but just the economic impact of the jobs that we have here and the support jobs in the community was about $6.5 million annually.
Wow, that's great. And one of the problems we ran into was actually a sales tax on fixed-wing aircraft.
Yes.
A lot of our sister states around us don't have that, so an airplane is very easy to pick up, fly elsewhere to have maintenance done, a lot of repair work. So that was a huge disincentive for the fixed-wing aircraft industry. We've actually lost aircraft builders, repair shops to other states. We're able to remove that. Any update on that legislation as we move forward? I know it did a good job of at least stopping the bleeding.
Yeah, we don't have any, we don't have actual real statistics. That's a little hard to measure, but I will tell you that our maintenance facility here, which we're going to visit in a few minutes, is busier than it's ever been. And in fact, we do get a lot of business from Maryland, where people in Maryland still pay tax on aircraft repairs. So it's definitely had a positive impact. It's certainly stopped any leakage, and I think it's gone beyond that and added business for our local community.
Yeah, and I think the economic incentive, not having that tax, will really help, especially with the competitor of Maryland so close to us. Getting that message out to Maryland
and
airplane owners, Virginia, letting them know, bring your planes here, get them repaired. Sales tax free is a huge incentive.
Yes, it is.
Good. So one of the histories, and I wasn't a car guy, a lot of my friends were car guys, but at one point this was a strip for...
it was a drag strip.
Drag strip.
Well, should we get into the history a little bit?
Do that.
Let's walk down here and look at our history wall. So actually these, a lot of these photographs here were given to me by Charlie Hostetter, and Charlie's dad, Oscar, founded the York Airport. This particular York Airport. York's had a lot of airports over the years. The initial York Airport was out off of Haynes Road in East York. And then it moved across from where the York Mall was. I think it's York Marketplace now. Then it moved over to Roosevelt Avenue near the quarry. And actually there's a photograph of that airport right here, the Roosevelt Avenue Airport.
Wow.
The hangars at the Roosevelt Avenue Airport were purchased by Mr. Hostetter, and he moved them up here, used and re-erected them, and those were some of the original hangars. Okay. He also built the main hangar, which we're going to walk out to and look at some of the planes in, and there's some photographs here of the main hangar construction, which was done in the 50s. But the airport here was actually started in the late 30s. Okay. The runways were grass. It played a very important part in World War II in that there were a lot of civilian pilots that were trained here who went on to join the military. Okay. We have a photograph of some of those cadets here. And actually the instructor on the left-hand side was a local gentleman who just recently passed away at 99 years old. Jack Hespenheide taught a lot of people in York to fly, including me and my father. Yes. Very neat. And at what point was this a drag strip? Yes, that's right. We were talking about the drag strip. So what happened was Mr. Hostetter decided that he was approached by some local drag racers after he put a paved runway in. And the runway was almost a mile long. It was 4,200 feet. Okay. And so he hosted drag races here on every Saturday night. They had drag races. Okay. Mr. Hostetter, when he got up in age, decided he wanted to sell the airport, and actually a drag racing consortium bought it. Okay. And it became York US 30 Dragway, so it was a dragway on the weekends, and then it was an airport throughout the week. All right. In the mid-'70s, York Building Products Company that operates the quarry next to the airport purchased the facility from the drag racers. Okay. And at that time, we ran the drag races for a few years, and in 1979, we decided that it was time for the drag racing to end, and that we're an airport, and we're going to be an airport 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what we are now, and we've expanded the runway and done a lot of work to improve the facility to enable jet aircraft to use the airport. Yeah, and that's interesting. How many feet do you need for jet aircraft versus propeller? Well, just like everything in Harrisburg, it depends. Yeah. It depends on the weather and so on and so forth, but typically to safely operate a jet you need at least 4,000 and normally 5,000 feet. Okay. Some jet aircraft can get in and out of shorter facilities. It depends on the temperature, it depends on how many people and how much fuel you have on board. Obviously an airplane is very weight sensitive. Yeah. The lighter it is, the higher the performance is, the shorter the runway you need and so forth. Yeah, very interesting. And growing up, Twin Pines development, maybe a mile away. I remember military aircraft doing some touch and goes. Yes. Obviously, we have some pilots out of Capital City, I believe, doing some military training, I believe, for Homeland Security. Do we still have, is that presence still here? The presence we have right now is there are two places in the country that are training pilots to fly for the Department of Homeland Security in a new light helicopter called a Lakota. Okay. One of them's in Arizona, the other one's at Capital City. They're all based at Capital City, but during the day they disperse to local airports. I think there are 8 helicopters that train every day. Okay. And so 2 come to York, 2 go to Lancaster, 2 stay at Capital City, and 2 might go up to Deck Field or something like that and practice and then come back. A neat military airplane, though, is down here on the end of our photo display, and it's actually a C-54 that brought President Eisenhower in here in the late 50s, and we have a picture of Mr. Hostetter greeting the president. Wow. Because he was going to his retreat in Gettysburg. So we get other military aircraft in here. It's been a while. We haven't had Air Force One. Yeah, that would be a tough landing probably for that big thing. But I hear it can do it. Yeah, I guess. Very neat. And then one of the things, obviously, is the involvement in the community. You started Aviation Days about 5 years. My boys love coming here, seeing some of the old World War II warplanes. My oldest one just loves watching them take off and land. Just loves the motion. What prompted you to start that, and how's it been going? Actually, Aviation Days is a great way to get the community out to the airport. We love community outreach programs. Our flight school, the owner of the flight school, Steve Nagorny, and there are 2 owners, Dave Myers, it was their idea. And they came to us with the idea, and we said, that's great, let's do it. They have some muscle cars here. Yep. They have the old Warbirds, and the whole thing is funded. It's funded privately. They raise all the money to do all of this, and it's been a great event. Yeah, again, my boys, I would offer up anybody coming out. Father's Day weekend. Father's Day weekend. Every year. It's a great time to spend with the family. There are some other neat things going on here that the community probably doesn't realize. We have a 24-hour base for Stat Medevac. So the medical helicopter that's outside on our ramp, the pilots and the EMT technicians are right up above us right now because the helicopter's actually here. They're not out on a mission. They're here 24 hours a day. We have a bunk room. We have a full kitchen, a living room, and they provide emergency medical service to any accidents or anybody that needs help. They do a lot of organ transportation for organ donors and so forth. And obviously we have a lot of businesses operating in and out of the airport, as you mentioned. We have 5 business jets based here, and they allow the owners to come out and go out of the international, wherever they need to go. And carry on their business and be there in a moment's notice to satisfy their customers.
Another important community service you provide is the Civil Air Patrol, which, if you're not familiar with it, they actually provide support missing people. They'll go out and fly missing people. They'll do emergency services in times of distress here in the Commonwealth. And they're actually based, your county squadron's actually based right here.
Yes, they are. And they always have been. They actually have their own headquarters building now. Mr. Hostetter's homestead. He built the airport, on the property that his homestead on. The Civil Air Patrol came to us years ago, and we said, if you guys want to take care of the building and move into there, we'll lease it to you for $1 a year. We have to lease it for something, so $1 a year, and so we help them out that way, and then they help us out on aviation days with traffic control and so forth. It's a great partnership.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking care of them. They do a great job for emergency services and protecting the Commonwealth in state of emergency. So thank you. Really appreciate
for the last 20 years, a lot of the local community came here and ate. We had some great restaurants. Unfortunately, our restaurant closed, and we are looking for another restaurant operator. So if anybody listening, or if you know of anybody who's interested in opening a restaurant, we'd be happy to talk to them. All they have to do is call the airport, and they'll put them in touch with me.
Excellent, that's great. I know there's a lot of people, pilots, who like to fly around and hit the airports. I know a lot of local people. I've had breakfast many times here as well. It's just neat to have breakfast and watch some airplanes come in.
It is. It's a great thing for children too.
Yeah,
we need to expose all our children to aviation.
Absolutely. So probably one of the most important aspects of owning an airplane and having an airport here in York County is obviously maintenance, because the last thing you want is random planes falling out of the sky. So you have to maintain them just like your car. They have an engine, they have moving parts, oil changes. So can you kind of give an overview of what kind of maintenance goes into airplanes to make sure they fly and they're safe?
Certainly. Well, we're here actually in the maintenance facility. The airplane behind us, we just finished doing a pre-buy inspection on. We do independent inspections for future buyers who want to buy a plane, just to make sure that it's been maintained properly and that it's airworthy and up to date with everything that the FAA requires. But we also do a lot of general maintenance here. Aircraft are required every 12 months to have an annual inspection. And there is a checklist of procedures that we go down through, and we check the engine and the landing gear and all of the flight controls and so forth for continuity. We do all of that here. And then, of course, airplanes, like your car, break probably a little more often than your car, because A, most airplanes are a lot older, and B, there are more parts and moving parts and so forth on an airplane that are really important to keeping it in the air. So we do a lot of regular maintenance work here on the engines, and as I said, on the flight controls and so forth. And of course, the aircraft engines require regular oil changes, typically 30 to 35 hours of flying time, and every 3 or 4 months. Because your airplane's not used every day, the engines sit, and there's a tendency for corrosion to form in the engine. So it's very important to have fresh oil in the engine, because the oil prevents the corrosion from the acid from corroding the internal engine components.
Excellent. And unlike kind of modern car engines, we were talking earlier, airplane engines are very basic.
Yeah, they're very primitive. The engines that are powering today's airplanes are basically descendants of the engines from the 1940s and 50s. They're air-cooled. They are large bore, big displacement. They actually burn low lead gasoline, 100 octane, so it's a lot higher octane than you can buy at the pump for your car. That's needed for detonation control, because the airplane engines don't have computers on, and detonation is like knocking. You remember back in the day, you probably don't, you're not old enough, but back in the day when you'd step on the gas and the engine would ping or knock, that's the beginning of detonation. Airplane engines don't have computer controls on them like cars do. And so we need to have a little bit of lead in there right now. And I say right now because they're coming up with some unleaded fuels. They're in development. But right now there's a little bit of lead in the fuel to keep from having detonation.
Yeah. How about ethanol? How does ethanol play?
We're absolutely not allowed to have any ethanol.
Oh, okay.
No. And part of the reason is there's a lot of rubber components and so forth, gaskets and rubber tubing and pipes and so forth that the ethanol can attack.
And eat through.
Which is not good.
Yeah. Obviously, you have technicians here that work on the aircraft. What kind of special training? Can you get that done in Pennsylvania?
Sure. Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania has a couple of great aviation schools. One of them is up in Williamsport at Penn College of Technology. Another one is in Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics. And typically, someone who's interested would go there and get trained and then be hired on as an apprentice in a shop like this. Both of our full-time mechanics here are inspection mechanics. They're IAs. The initial license that you get from the FAA is called an A&P license, an aircraft and power plant license. And then the next step is an IA, an inspection. You're inspection authorized. You're authorized to inspect. So we have the highest level of technicians here at our facility.
Excellent. And you don't do any body work here? It's just general maintenance, mechanical work?
We just do maybe a little bit of touch-up painting, but we don't do a lot of sheet metal repairs or anything like that. If someone lands and forgets to put the wheels down, it would go somewhere else to be repaired.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be a very dangerous thing.
Not typically.
Okay.
Typically, not getting the wheels down is not as big a problem as you might think. It's a very survivable thing, and not that big of a deal other than to your wallet.
Yeah, I'm sure. So here we are in the original hangar here at the York Airport with a huge plethora of different airplanes on display. A lot of them are, I guess, training for instruction and stuff like that. So can you kind of go over history of the hangar here and then what we're looking at?
Yeah, the hangar here this hangar in particular was built in the late 1950s to store aircraft like we see here today. And not a lot has changed since then. We still have the original boiler and the steam heating system in here. It is heated in the winter. People like to keep their airplanes inside because when they're outside in the sun, the paint fades, it rains on them, which really won't hurt them, but long term it's not good for them. It's best to store an aircraft inside. Yeah. So behind us here we have some of the airplanes from York flight training. And these are airplanes that you can lease. And if you're a pilot, you may fly them wherever you want. You pay so many dollars an hour for the time that you fly them. Or they're the trains that you get, or the planes that you get trained in. I got my trains and my planes backwards. But anyhow, they are the aircraft that you would take your initial flight training in. Typically, like the one here behind us, the high-wing airplane could get you to the beach in an hour. With no traffic.
That's always nice.
Always nice, yes.
How hard is it to get your pilot's license? Walk in today and say, I want to go get my pilot's license.
Walk in today and say, you know what, I want to get my pilot's license. Typically the cost, I would say, would be between $7,500 and $10,000. If you are very diligent about it and you have a good instructor and the weather cooperates, I think I read the statistic that on average people are getting their licenses with about 70 hours of flying time. So if you fly 3 hours a week, you're 23, 24 weeks. It's a 6-month process. A lot to learn.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And obviously you have book work as well.
Yes.
On top of just getting up and flying.
There are basically, 3 things involved with getting your license. One is you have to have a current medical. So you go to a designated FAA examiner and he examines you and makes sure you're fit to fly an airplane. The second thing is you need to take a flight test with a designated flight examiner. So that's going through a lot of maneuvers and so forth and how you handle emergencies in the airplane. And then the third thing that you need is you need to pass a written exam. And the written exam goes over all the rules and regulations and the different types of airspace and when you can fly and when you can't and so forth.
Most of the planes here, kind of what year, what kind of model were we looking at?
Yeah, most of these airplanes were built in the 1970s. Aircraft are basically all aluminum, so they don't rust like a car, and as long as you keep them inside, they don't corrode, they can give many, many years of service. The 1970s were the boom years of aviation, the 70s and the early 80s of general aviation. You had a lot of pilots that were trained by the military for Vietnam. They came home. There were other people who were in the service, and when they got out of the service, they were trained under the GI Bill. the government paid for them to get their pilot's licenses. So that generated a lot of pilots my age and a little older. And the new pilot population is not as large as the pilot population from when I learned to fly.
Okay. So here we are in the flight planning area where the pilots will come in, they'll set their, where they want to fly to, set their charts, and then obviously you have a beautiful map of most of the United States.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you can kind of go over how traffic control is done here at the York Airport, and then how a pilot would go through a planning session.
Yeah, certainly. And as you mentioned, the map here behind us is an aviation map of basically most of the United States. And all the cities are depicted on here. We're looking at Chicago up here. To a typical flight, if you're flying under visual flight rules, you can go out and basically fly anywhere you want to go and not even talk to anybody, as long as you don't get near the big airports. Okay, or go to an airport with a control tower. There are a lot of fields that are uncontrolled in the United States. So you and I could get in an airplane and leave York, and we could fly out here to Kankakee, Illinois, and land and not talk to anybody about it. That's the freedom that we all enjoy as Americans that's so important to protect. It's like getting in your car. You don't have to tell somebody that you're going to drive to Kankakee, Illinois. Obviously, the larger airports have control towers and approach controls and so forth. Or if you want to fly when the weather is not like it is today, a beautiful sunny day outside. If you want to fly in the clouds, you need to have a special rating called an instrument rating, which is a whole nother series of tests and educational processes that you have to go through to allow you to do that, because it's a lot more complicated. Here at York, we have a common traffic advisory system, and we have a standard flight pattern that all the airplanes coming and going fly. So we as pilots know what to expect and where to look when we're talking on the radio. We announce ourselves. We'll say that we're 10 miles west of York and we're going to enter the downwind for runway 35. So every other pilot that's in the area is on the same frequency, hears us, and they know what to expect and to look for us coming. Same way when we depart, we tell them where we're going to go. So everybody knows where everybody else is. Now, when the weather's not so nice, we have instrument approaches to get into the airport here, like they do at Harrisburg or any of the big airports, BWI. And that allows pilots to take off and land when the weather's less than ideal. For us to do that, though, because we don't have an approach control and a control tower, we're tied in. There's a noisy box behind us over here, and that's a radio relay to Harrisburg's control tower, actually their approach control at the base of the tower at Harrisburg International. So when we want to leave, we get on the radio down here, we talk to Harrisburg, and they hold anybody who wants to get into York until we get into the air and we're radar identified. Then they'll let that person land. They won't let anybody else take off. So the airspace over York is controlled by Harrisburg when the weather's bad, and they only allow one airplane in that airspace at a time.
That's nice safety. When a pilot first comes in and they want to do a chart a path, obviously you have computers here. How's that? Very simple process?
Well, it's really changed over the years. It's a great question, because back when I learned to fly back in the early 70s, we used to have something called flight service, because we didn't have the internet. And we would pick the telephone up, we would call a toll-free number, and someone, they would be called a briefer. They would tell you all about the weather all along your route that you wanted to fly, and you would make all kinds of notes and write everything down. And so you had to form this mental picture of what the weather was doing, where you were going, and what you were going to fly through, and what it was expected to do. Today, of course, with the internet, everything's on the internet. There still are flight service briefers, but very few people really use them, because we can do everything over the internet and we can self-brief.
And when you're doing instrument, my understanding is there's basically, how it was explained to me, is there's actually considered roadways through the sky.
Well, that has changed over the years too. There's a lot of stuff that's changed. There are ground-based navigational aids, and there are these circles here on the map. And those are radio stations that are on the ground. And prior to GPS and LORAN, that's how everybody navigated. You had to fly from point to point to point. So when I learned to fly, we flew from point to point. Now with GPS, we can enter Kankakee, Illinois, and we can hit direct to, and it takes us directly there in not really a straight line, but the shortest possible distance, which is really the Great Circle route. it's a little bit of a curved line because of the geometry of the Earth, which I don't understand completely. But
yeah. So technology has really advanced, yes. and obviously, could you use a regular GPS from a car?
No.
Or are you special
for? If you're going to use the GPS to navigate under instrument flight rules, it has to be a certified box and a certified installation by the FAA. That's very important. There are real high standards these things are built to. Obviously, in the car, if your GPS goes kaput, it really doesn't matter. In the airplane, it does when you're in the clouds, and that's how you're navigating.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then for kind of emergency protocol for what's a normal process for emergency protocol for a pilot? How does it work?
Well, there are several ways that the pilot can get themselves into trouble. One is certainly the weather. If you're not instrument rated and you're flying and you think it's going to be a clear day and you didn't do the proper briefing, and you could get into trouble with weather. You can always call a controller. There's an emergency frequency that every pilot knows. It's 121.5. And no matter what happens in the airplane, if it's an emergency, all of the control towers and approach controls all over the country listen to that frequency.
Okay.
So if you would just say Mayday, 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 and you would say your N number and what the issue is you may have a medical emergency. Somebody on the plane might have had a heart attack, and you need to know where to get them on the ground as quick as possible. And they will direct you there. You could have you could run out of gas. People once in a while run out of gas because they didn't do the right flight planning. So all types of things.
We've had those around York now and then, planes coming down at different locations. Does the airport work closely with kind of the emergency management, York County, and then local, the volunteer
really
fire
the volunteer fire department, they're the first responders if there's an aircraft accident. And then the FAA has a flight standards district office in Harrisburg at Capital City Airport. So they would come down.
Okay. Tim, thank you again so much for your time today and showing a real beautiful jewel here in York County, and hopefully people will come out, visit, stop by, and definitely attend Aviation Days at the other great community events you do.
Well, thank you very much, Seth, and we appreciate the opportunity to host you here today, and hope that this has been beneficial and that some more York Countyans learn to know that we do have an airport right here in York County, and as you said, we always welcome them here as visitors.
Yeah. Fortunately, that's all the time we have today. Again, I'm State Representative Seth Grove, and this is another edition of Legislative Report. Contact information will be at the end of the show if you do have any questions about what you viewed today. Thank you.